Long before cities hummed, before we knew what time was, humans were wandering under endless skies. Imagine it, a small group of people, maybe just a few thousand, looking up at stars that didn't even have names yet. They were tiny dots in a huge, quiet world. Somewhere in that calm, something strange happened. For nearly 70,000 years, our bodies barely changed. Faces, hands, even our height, kind of stuck. Almost like evolution hit the snooze button. Did humans really stop evolving? Or did evolution just decide to take a nap? Tonight, we're going to find out. A story of survival, starlight, and a long, quiet pause in the way we changed. So grab your blankets, get cozy, and let's drift back in time. Evolution isn't a clock you can see ticking. It's written in bones, in tiny changes in our genes, in the way we adapt to life without even noticing. For millions of years, humans kept changing, getting taller, smarter, stronger, hairier, you name it. But around 70,000 years ago, things slowed down. A lot. That was the time of the genetic bottleneck, a fancy term scientists use for a period when the human population shrank to just a few thousand. Imagine the whole human race packed into one really tiny party, and everyone survived. Somehow. And here's the weird part. After that, our bodies barely changed. Our skeletons, our faces, basically our physical selves stopped evolving the way they used to. But don't worry, we didn't stop learning, dreaming, or getting into trouble. Scientists think it happened because life got a little easier. Humans were clever enough to make fire, tools, and language. Instead of our bodies changing to survive, our minds started doing the heavy lifting. Evolution didn't vanish, it just got creative. Tonight, we'll wander beside the humans who survived the ash, the hunger, the cold. We'll listen to what their genes still whisper today, and explore the strange, quiet time when change itself seemed to pause. So let's take a deep breath, sink into the story, and drift back to a world where survival was tough, but dreams were even tougher. Maybe, just maybe, evolution wasn't asleep at all. Maybe it was just meditating. Long before there were cities, streets, or even the word human, the world was quiet. Really quiet. No cars honking, no Wi-Fi complaining, not even the soft hum of an air conditioner. Just wind, stars, and the occasional animal wondering if humans were worth noticing. And somewhere in that vast quiet, a small group of people walked beneath the night sky. Maybe a few thousand, or maybe a few tens of thousands. Hard to say, because numbers back then were more of a suggestion than a fact. These people were survivors. Tough, clever, and maybe a little stubborn. They had made it through a world that could have easily eaten them up. And yet, for all their survival skills, they looked a lot like us. Not exactly like us. More rugged, more hair, probably a lot smellier, but enough that if you woke up in a time machine next to them, you wouldn't run screaming. You might just think, wow, these folks have bedhead too. But here's the strange part. For tens of thousands of years after that, humans didn't change much at all. Not in the ways you might expect. Not in height, not in facial structure, not in hands that could pick up a spear or a smartphone with equal awkwardness. Evolution, which had been busy tinkering with our bodies for millions of years, seemed to take a long nap. It's like Mother Nature looked at humans and said, yeah, good enough. Let's go have a tea break. So, why did it happen? Why did the body stop changing while the mind went off on wild adventures of language, tools, and storytelling? That's the question that drifts beneath the stars even now, like a quiet whisper from the past. Tonight, we're going to chase that whisper. Before we dive into explanations and theories, let's set the scene. Imagine the world as it was around 70,000 years ago. The sky overhead is darker than any night you've ever seen. There's no city glow, no streetlights, not even a faint glow from someone's phone screen. The moon might be out, pale and steady, and the stars are thick, brighter, and closer than they feel today. You can see the Milky Way stretching across the sky like spilled milk. And under that sky, people huddle in small groups. They're keeping warm by fire, chewing on roots, berries, maybe the occasional roasted mammal, and they're thinking. Well, thinking about survival mostly. Because life back then wasn't easy. It was a game where the stakes were high, and the rules could change with a single storm, a single predator, or a single volcanic eruption. And actually, there was one volcanic eruption that almost wiped them out entirely. The Toba supereruption in Indonesia. This massive explosion sent ash into the sky, blocked the sun, and plunged the Earth into what some scientists call a volcanic winter. It was cold, dark, and scary. Humans survived. Barely. Estimates suggest the global population shrank to perhaps as few as 2 to 10,000 people. That's right, 2 to 10,000. That's smaller than some college campuses today. And yet, here we are, descended from that tiny group. If evolution had relied solely on numbers, well, we might have been stuck in a permanent snooze. But humans didn't just survive. Somehow, they thrived, even when the odds were against them. And here's where the mystery deepens. After surviving the bottleneck, the human body, that amazing, adaptive machine, barely changed. Our brains were already massive and complex, ready to invent fire, language, and eventually, Netflix. Our hands could make tools. Our legs could travel miles. Our bodies were basically good enough. Now, you might be wondering, does this mean evolution quit entirely? Not really. Evolution is a sneaky, slow, patient thing. It doesn't always shout, "Look at me." Sometimes it whispers. And after this point, it started working more quietly, in ways you can't immediately see. Not in the shape of our bones, but in the fine details of our DNA. In genes that helped us digest certain foods, resist disease, or survive in harsh climates. But physically, outwardly, we looked much the same. Evolution had gone invisible. Some scientists call this period a time of stabilizing selection. Basically, humans had reached a point where we were well adapted to our environment, and big changes weren't necessary anymore. If you picture evolution as a gardener, they had planted the right seeds, watered them just enough, and then let them be. No pruning, no reshaping, just gentle care. And that's why our bodies stayed familiar, even as the world kept changing around us. But while our bodies rested, our minds did not. Language began to blossom. Fire became more than warmth, it became a gathering point for stories. Early humans painted, carved, and sang. Culture exploded, and with it, a new kind of evolution started. One that happened in minds, not bones. Clever solutions replaced physical adaptations. Tools replaced brute strength. Communities replaced solitary survival. It was like evolution had switched from hard labor to thinking outside the box. Or perhaps, thinking inside the cave by the fire, while humming to yourself softly. And that's where the humor comes in. Because humans have always been a little lazy when it comes to survival, in a way. Why grow taller when you can make a ladder? Why develop super thick skin when you can make clothes? Why outrun a predator when you can build a trap? Our brains became the ultimate tool, letting evolution relax for a bit. And somehow, it worked. So as we look up at the same stars those humans once saw, it's easy to feel small, and yet, connected. We're still carrying the echoes of those nights, of those fires, of those tiny, stubborn groups of humans who survived against incredible odds. And we're still shaped by the quiet, patient work of evolution, even if it seems to have taken a nap for a while. Tonight, as we drift through this story, remember this: change didn't stop. It just became quieter. Our bodies became the calm pond, reflecting the sky above. And in that reflection, evolution began to whisper, to shift subtly, preparing for the next chapter, one of minds, dreams, and adventures far beyond the survival of the day. So close your eyes a little, breathe slowly, and imagine yourself sitting by that ancient fire. Listen to the crackle. Feel the cool night air. And remember that evolution, much like the stars, moves slowly, sometimes imperceptibly, always quietly, always there. Because even when change seems asleep, it's still dreaming. Imagine the Earth 70,000 years ago. Not quite like today. No cities. No highways. No annoying neighbor mowing the lawn at 7 a.m. The world was mostly wild. Forests, deserts, mountains, rivers running freely. And humans? Well, humans were few and far between. Tiny groups scattered across Africa, each trying not to become someone else's dinner. Then, something extraordinary happened. A volcano, not just any volcano, but a really big one, erupted in what we now call Indonesia. Scientists call it the Toba supereruption. And when I say really big, I mean it. This thing blasted so much ash into the sky that the sun was blocked for years. The sky turned dark. The world got colder. Food became scarce. It was like Mother Nature had pressed the ultimate pause button on life. The humans who survived that eruption faced extreme odds. Some estimates suggest the global population may have dropped to as few as 2,000 individuals. 2,000. Imagine the entire human race squeezed into one tiny village, and that village probably didn't even have Wi-Fi. Talk about a tight-knit group. This period is what scientists call a genetic bottleneck. A bottleneck is simple to understand. Imagine pouring a bunch of marbles through a narrow neck of a bottle. Only a few marbles make it through. Everything else stays behind. The marbles that pass through the neck carry the future. And that's what happened with humans. The survivors of Toba carried all the genetic information needed for the entire future of our species. If any of them had been a little clumsier, a little sicker, or just unlucky, well, we wouldn't be here to talk about it, or sleep through bedtime stories about it. It's strange to think about. 2,000 people. That's smaller than most college campuses today. And yet, somehow, they managed to survive, to reproduce, and to rebuild their populations. Every human being on the planet today descends from that small, stubborn group of survivors. When you think about it, it's kind of miraculous, or at least lucky. And humans have always had a way of mixing a little luck with a lot of stubbornness. Now, the bottleneck did more than just shrink numbers. It left a permanent mark on our genes. Some geneticists say this was like a reset button, wiping away some variations, keeping others. That's part of the reason humans haven't changed as much physically since that time. The genes that made people strong, clever, and adaptable survived. Everything else? Well, let's just say evolution was keeping only the essentials. And yet, even in this extreme moment, humans weren't passive. They found ways to survive. They hunted, gathered, and shared knowledge. They adapted to cold, hunger, and fear, not through big body changes, but through creativity. If you think about it, humans were like tiny, scrappy engineers, designing solutions to problems without blueprints. One night, maybe someone figured out a better way to build a shelter. Another night, someone discovered a new route that didn't taste like dirt. These were small victories, but they mattered a lot. Interestingly, this bottleneck also explains a few quirks in our DNA. Certain genetic diseases today are more common because of the small number of ancestors who survived. It's like nature kept a smaller sample, and a few rare traits ended up sticking around. Kind of like inheriting your grandma's weird sock collection. You didn't ask for it, but it's part of the package. But here's a fun thought. Even in the darkest nights, humans still laughed. Probably not like sitcom laughter, more like quiet chuckles around the fire. Maybe someone tripped over a log. Maybe a baby made a strange noise. Even during extreme survival, small joys existed. Evolution didn't just shape our bodies, it shaped our social instincts. Humor, cooperation, storytelling. These traits may have been just as important as big muscles or sharp teeth. And honestly, it's comforting to think that humans, even tens of thousands of years ago, could still enjoy a good laugh, or at least a goofy attempt at one. As the bottleneck ended and populations slowly grew, humans spread out again. Small groups moved to new lands, discovering forests, rivers, and eventually deserts and mountains. Each group carried the legacy of the survivors, clever, resilient, and a little lucky. And even though the world changed, our bodies remained mostly the same. That pause in physical change is part of what fascinates scientists today. While our surroundings shifted dramatically, our skeletons and muscles didn't need much alteration. Nature had done its work. Humans were, for the most part, good enough. But don't confuse good enough with boring. Even after the bottleneck, humans were constantly learning. They invented new hunting tools, figured out fire management, and gradually built the first sparks of culture. Evolution hadn't disappeared. It had shifted focus. From dramatic changes in form to subtle tweaks, from visible traits to genes, behaviors, and brains. So, the last great bottleneck was more than a moment of crisis. It was a turning point. Humans went from being shaped mostly by survival pressures to shaping survival itself. We began to influence our environment, develop culture, and, eventually, create civilizations. It was a moment when our species realized, maybe unconsciously, that brains could do what bodies once did. And maybe, just maybe, that's when evolution decided it could take a little nap. Tonight, as you imagine those fires under endless stars, remember the tiny group of humans who survived against impossible odds. Picture them sharing warmth, food, and knowledge, huddled together while the world was dark and cold. They are your ancestors, and their survival is why we exist. Their stories whisper in our DNA, our instincts, even in our quiet moments before sleep. And as you drift off tonight, remember this: evolution may have slowed in visible ways, but it was never gone. It was quiet, patient, and clever, just like the humans who survived the last great bottleneck. And who knows? Maybe, somewhere deep inside us, it's still nudging us forward, softly, slowly, dreaming of the next adventure. By the time humans had survived the bottleneck, something remarkable had already happened. Our brains were basically modern. Not exactly like yours or mine today, but close enough that if we traveled back, we could probably have held a conversation, assuming we all spoke the same language. And okay, maybe some gestures would have been involved. The human brain had grown big and complex over hundreds of thousands of years. Our ancestors' skulls slowly expanded, creating room for more neurons, more memory, more thinking power. This wasn't just about intelligence in the way we think of it today. It was about survival. Bigger brains meant better problem solving, better tool making, better social planning. You could imagine someone realizing, maybe I shouldn't fight that saber-tooth. Maybe I'll just climb that tree over there. That's intelligence saving lives, one clever idea at a time. And it's not just survival smarts. These brains were capable of imagination. They could picture things that weren't immediately in front of them. This meant they could plan hunts, tell stories, even dream. Some anthropologists argue that storytelling might have been one of the earliest human adaptations. Picture someone by the fire, gesturing wildly, making up tales of the big hunt, the scary storm, or the animal that got away. Others around the fire would listen, learn, and maybe chuckle quietly. Storytelling wasn't just entertainment, it was a survival tool, teaching, bonding, warning. Evolution had shifted its focus from the physical to the mental, and our brains were the shiny new frontier. This was also the era when humans began developing symbolic thinking. A symbol could be anything, a mark on a rock, a carved piece of bone, even a painted handprint. These marks weren't practical like a spear or a fire. They were ideas. And ideas are powerful. Once humans could imagine things that didn't exist yet, gods, tools, maps of stars, they were no longer completely at the mercy of the environment. The world could change, storms could come, predators could stalk, but humans could plan, innovate, and adapt mentally. Interestingly, this is also around the time when humans started to show signs of culture in a big way. Archaeologists have found beads, jewelry, and early art dating back tens of thousands of years. Imagine someone threading a shell onto a string, maybe thinking, "This looks nice. Maybe I'll wear it to impress someone." It seems simple, but it's huge. People were beginning to care about identity, about communication, about leaving a mark on the world. And that's evolution, too. Just quieter, slower, and inside the mind. Now, here's a little bit of humor for you. Despite all this brain power, humans weren't suddenly perfect. They still got things wrong. They probably spent hours figuring out how to start a fire, only to set their hair on fire a few times. They misjudged a berry, thought it was safe, and then learned the hard way. Big brains didn't mean instant genius. It just meant we had the potential to figure things out, eventually. And we did. The fascinating thing is that once the brain reached this modern size, physical evolution slowed down. Why? Well, think about it. If your brain can invent a spear instead of your arms having to be longer to throw rocks, you don't really need longer arms anymore. If you can plan, cooperate, and make fire, you don't need extra thick skin or bigger muscles to survive every challenge. Intelligence had become a survival shortcut, and evolution took notice. Our bodies stayed relatively the same while our minds ran ahead, exploring possibilities the body didn't even need to tackle. And that's where humans really started to diverge from the rest of the animal kingdom. Most species evolve through changes in physical traits: size, strength, claws, speed. Humans evolved through culture and innovation. We used our brains to outsmart our environment instead of relying solely on brute force. And that's why, when scientists look at fossils after this period, they see something unusual. Skeletons that look familiar, hands and faces that look modern, and yet minds capable of things that no other species could do. It's important to note that modern doesn't mean perfect or advanced in the way we imagine today. These humans still struggled with survival every day. Diseases, predators, weather, and accidents were all threats. But the cognitive tools they carried gave them an edge. Planning, communication, cooperation. These were the invisible weapons that allowed humans to thrive in a world that could have easily wiped them out. So, in a way, evolution was still very active, just in a different form. Instead of shaping bones and muscles, it was shaping thought, behavior, and culture. This is why some scientists describe this period as a shift from physical evolution to cultural evolution. The human brain had become the playground where adaptation happened. Instead of waiting for generations to pass for a new trait to appear, humans could innovate in a single lifetime. A new idea, a new tool, a new way to cooperate. Suddenly survival didn't depend on millions of years of slow changes. And here's the quiet, magical part. All of this happened under the same night skies that the bottleneck survivors had seen. Firelight flickered across faces, hands shaped clay or stone, and stories passed from one generation to the next. Humans were evolving in ways you can't see in the fossil record, but you can feel them in the rhythm of a story, in the spark of an idea, in the slow unfolding of human culture. So as you drift in your bed tonight, imagine sitting by that ancient fire. Imagine listening to the crackle while a storyteller gestures wildly, recounting the hunt or the storm or the clever escape from a predator. You're witnessing the quiet evolution of the human mind, a kind of change that doesn't leave bones behind, but leaves something even more lasting. Imagination, creativity, and the spark of what it means to be human. Because while our bodies may have taken a long nap after the bottleneck, our brains were wide awake, curious, and clever. And in that waking, evolution found a new path, one where survival wasn't just about strength or speed, but about thinking, planning, and dreaming. And if you think about it, that's a kind of evolution that's still happening today. Every time someone invents something new, tells a story, or wonders what might be possible. So tonight, remember this: evolution didn't stop. It just changed gears. It traded visible muscles for invisible thoughts, and slow physical change for rapid mental adventure. And from that shift, humanity began a journey that would eventually lead to art, language, cities, and bedtime stories like this one. And who knows? Maybe somewhere deep in your own brain, evolution is quietly nudging you along too. Not in ways you can see, but in ways you can imagine, dream, and create. After the bottleneck and the big brain explosion, humans found themselves in a curious place. The world wasn't as harsh as before, at least not all the time. Seasons came and went, animals roamed, rivers flowed, and for long stretches, life settled into a rhythm. The savannas stretched under wide, endless skies. Trees swayed gently in the wind, and nights were dark, filled with the soft chorus of insects and distant predators. It was a stable world. And stability is interesting when it comes to evolution. See, evolution loves pressure. It's like a sculptor who keeps carving a statue because the clay is soft and pliable. Change happens when the environment demands it, when survival is on the line and adaptation is rewarded. But when things stay pretty much the same, well, the sculptor starts sipping tea and watching the clouds. That's exactly what happened to humans during this long stretch. Our bodies had already hit the sweet spot. Our brains were sharp, our hands clever, our feet steady. Humans could walk, run, climb, throw, and hunt just well enough to survive. We didn't need bigger muscles, faster legs, or sharper teeth. The environment didn't force us to change physically anymore, because we had reached what scientists call stabilizing selection. Fancy words, simple idea. If something works, evolution tends to leave it alone. So, for tens of thousands of years, humans wandered the savanna, moving with the seasons, following herds, gathering fruits and roots, fishing in streams, and hunting when they could. Their bodies stayed much the same, but their minds were active. Tools got better, hunting strategies improved, and stories passed around the fire grew more complex. Humans were learning, experimenting, and communicating. Evolution was still at work, just quietly, shaping behavior and culture instead of muscles and bones. Picture a group of humans on a warm evening, sitting around a fire. One of them sharpens a spear while another grinds a stone tool. Someone else starts telling a story, maybe about a leopard that almost snatched a child, or a clever idea for trapping an antelope. Laughter breaks out, maybe not a lot, but enough to make the night feel alive. These small, everyday activities weren't just survival tactics, they were shaping the social brains of humans. Cooperation, empathy, and imagination became the new frontiers of evolution. And yet, even in this calm period, humans faced challenges. Droughts came. Herds moved. Predators prowled. Diseases existed, though they were smaller in scale than the crowded epidemics we know today. Survival wasn't guaranteed. But because humans were clever, they relied on brains instead of brawn. They could anticipate, plan, and share knowledge. Their stability didn't mean ease, it meant opportunity. Evolution had traded dramatic bodily change for subtle mental and cultural adaptation. Interestingly, this period also helped humans build endurance. Long walks across the savanna, climbing hills, carrying water and food, all of this reinforced our physical traits, not through evolution pushing for new features, but through repeated use. Our bodies had become like well-tuned instruments, capable of performing many tasks without needing dramatic changes. A bit like a car that's already efficient, you don't need a bigger engine, just better navigation. And let's not forget humor. Humans still found ways to enjoy life, even in a world where every day could be dangerous. Maybe someone tripped over a log and everyone laughed quietly. Maybe a child tried to mimic a hunting technique and failed spectacularly. Small joys, small mischiefs, they mattered. Social bonds were critical to survival, and laughter, even subtle, helped tighten those bonds. Evolution was quietly rewarding not just cleverness, but the ability to belong, to cooperate, to comfort one another during tough nights. During these stable times, humans also began noticing patterns. They observed the seasons, the movements of animals, and the cycles of day and night. They started predicting where water would be, when fruits would ripen, and when predators were most active. This anticipation wasn't just practical. It trained the mind, refining attention, memory, and planning skills. Every observation, every learned habit, became a kind of evolutionary advantage, invisible in the fossil record, but crucial for survival. And yet, the physical changes remained small. Humans looked very similar across generations. Heights were consistent, limbs stayed proportionate, faces remained recognizable. Evolution hadn't stopped. It had simply slowed in ways you could see. Nature had paused its sculpting hands while the human brain sculpted itself. But this pause was more than a biological fact. It was a gift. Stability allowed humans to innovate. Tools could be refined over decades, techniques could be passed down, and culture could accumulate. Imagine generations of humans adding tiny improvements to their way of life, like scribbling notes in a giant, slow-moving notebook of survival. It was gradual, invisible, but powerful. The savanna at night was both quiet and alive. Fires burned, casting shadows on faces, illuminating hands that shaped tools. The wind carried the scent of grass, smoke, and distant water. Humans spoke softly, laughed softly, and imagined softly. Evolution, in its quiet way, watched and guided, not with dramatic leaps, but through subtle nudges in behavior, cooperation, and thought. And here's a gentle reminder: stability doesn't mean stagnation. For humans, it meant the chance to perfect skills, strengthen social bonds, and develop intelligence that would one day allow us to paint, to sculpt, to sing, and to tell stories around fires that future generations would remember. So, as you lie down tonight, imagine that quiet savanna. Picture the humans moving carefully, learning, cooperating, and dreaming. Feel the calm rhythm of life long before cities, before roads, before screens. This is the world that allowed evolution to take a subtle, quiet path, shaping minds and behavior while leaving bodies mostly unchanged. And maybe, just maybe, that quiet period taught us something important. Sometimes the most profound changes happen not in bursts of drama, but in long stretches of calm. Evolution was still at work, not rushing, not panicking, but patiently guiding humans toward a future full of possibilities. So breathe slowly, sink into the night, and imagine those ancient fires, the soft laughter, the gentle lessons learned under a sky filled with stars. Evolution may have slowed for our bodies, but it was wide awake in our minds, whispering, nudging, dreaming. After tens of thousands of years of relative stability, humans found themselves in an unusual situation. Their bodies were mostly done evolving. Bones, hands, faces, legs, all of it had reached a sort of good enough stage. Evolution had taken a step back, pressing the snooze button on physical change. But while genes were resting, something else began to wake: culture. Culture is a funny thing. It's not written in DNA, yet it shapes who we are. It's the stories we tell, the tools we make, the songs we sing, and the ideas we share. When survival pressures eased, humans started experimenting. And when they experimented, culture exploded. Imagine humans around a fire, not just talking about what they caught for dinner, but also comparing strategies, telling stories about what might have happened if they hadn't been so clever. These conversations weren't just entertainment, they were evolution in disguise. Think about it. When your body can handle most challenges, your mind becomes the playground. Instead of muscles or claws, humans honed cooperation, problem-solving, and imagination. Evolution didn't stop. It just shifted gears. The brain became the main stage for survival. And what a stage it was! Language was one of the first big acts. Words allowed humans to share knowledge quickly, to warn about dangers, and to plan hunts across miles of savanna. You didn't need to experience every mistake personally. Someone else's story could teach you, saving both time and risk. Language became a kind of mental technology, quietly guiding evolution without leaving marks on bones. Then came symbols, art, and ritual. Carved bones, painted hands, beads strung on twine. Small, subtle things, but powerful. A shell necklace might have been worn for beauty, status, or as a charm against bad luck. These cultural innovations created social cohesion. They made humans more cooperative, more empathetic, and more capable of working together. Skills that increased survival without changing the body. And humor, of course, played its part. Imagine a group of humans experimenting with a new hunting technique. Someone trips spectacularly. Laughter breaks out around the fire. Not only does humor create bonds, but it also teaches subtle lessons. Don't repeat that mistake, or maybe just lighten up when life gets tricky. Culture, after all, is evolution with a wink and a grin. With culture in full swing, humans began shaping the environment instead of merely adapting to it. They used fire to manage the land, cleared small areas for gathering, and started experimenting with planting seeds, the early whispers of agriculture. Tools improved over generations, passed down, refined, and innovated. A sharp stone became a spearhead. A dugout branch became a canoe. All of this was evolution's quiet work, expressed not in changing bodies, but in changing behaviors and knowledge. Even survival itself became a cultural endeavor. Humans learned to care for the weak, the sick, and the young. Sharing food, teaching skills, protecting children, these behaviors strengthened the group as a whole. Evolution began favoring intelligence, cooperation, and social understanding over raw physical power. Our species was adapting in a way that no other animal could, building a kind of invisible safety net made of ideas and relationships. Interestingly, this is when humans started building memory in new ways. Oral traditions, storytelling, and art preserved knowledge across generations. Think about it. Each story told, each song sung, each pattern carved into a rock was like a little evolutionary nudge. Skills, lessons, and wisdom didn't have to wait for DNA to catch up. Culture carried them forward instantly. It's evolution with a cheat code. And yes, there were still mistakes. Someone might plant a seed in the wrong soil, or misjudge the weather, or get eaten by a predator because they wandered too far. But humans learned from these mistakes collectively. That's the beauty of culture. It's faster, more flexible, and often far more forgiving than genes. A single person's misstep didn't doom the group. Ideas could survive and improve independently of the body. By now, humans had effectively created a new evolutionary system, one that worked in parallel with DNA, shaping survival through learning, communication, and innovation. Brains became tools. Stories became strategies. Communities became protective networks. Physical traits didn't need to evolve as fast because cultural solutions could handle the challenges. Fire, shelter, weapons, cooperation, these became the extensions of the human body, replacing slow genetic change with rapid mental and social change. And here's the subtle humor in it all. Humans had finally outsmarted evolution, in a way. Bodies weren't changing much, but brains were working overtime. People were inventing new ways to survive, thrive, and sometimes just entertain themselves around a fire. Evolution had found a shortcut. Instead of reshaping the body, it shaped behavior. Instead of waiting for mutations, humans could innovate. Instead of growing bigger teeth, humans made knives. Instead of running faster, they made traps. Genius, really. So, as you imagine humans by those ancient fires, think of the world alive with quiet brilliance. Every story told, every tool made, every idea shared was a small act of evolution. Culture wasn't just a distraction from survival. It was survival. It was the way humans continued to evolve when their genes were resting. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep, picture that. Humans gathered under starlit skies, whispering stories, laughing softly, sharing knowledge. Bodies rested in the calm of a stable world, but minds were awake, curious, and inventive. And just like that, evolution had shifted from shaping bones to shaping thoughts, from pressing the sculptor's chisel into flesh to gently nudging ideas, creativity, and cooperation forward. Even now, thousands of years later, that quiet cultural evolution continues. Every time we tell a story, invent something new, or work together, we're walking along the same path our ancestors began. Evolution in action, soft, subtle, and brilliantly human. Because when genes rest, culture wakes. And sometimes, that's the smartest, most powerful evolution of all. After tens of thousands of years wandering the savannas and refining culture, humans were ready for something new. Not just a new tool or a better story, but new lands. It was time to leave Africa. And when humans left, they began a journey that would take them across deserts, mountains, rivers, and oceans. A journey of curiosity, survival, and a little bit of stubbornness. Picture it, a small group of humans standing at the edge of a vast landscape, looking at lands they had never seen. Some of them probably shrugged, muttered to a friend, "Well, guess we're going this way," and set off. Others might have been a little more hesitant, thinking, "I hope there's food over there." And yet, step by step they moved. They had survived volcanic winters, harsh climates, and dwindling populations. Crossing into unknown territories? That was just another adventure. This migration didn't happen all at once. Small bands moved slowly, following herds of animals, rivers, and fertile lands. Sometimes they got lucky and found plenty of food. Other times, they stumbled into deserts, icy plains, or thick forests that seemed to stretch forever. But they adapted. And adaptation here didn't always mean their bodies changed dramatically. It often meant their minds and their culture did. They learned which plants were safe to eat, how to track animals, and how to find water where none seemed to exist. Imagine walking for days, maybe weeks, over unfamiliar terrain. Your feet are tired, your stomach grumbles, but your mind is alert. You notice the way the sun rises over a hill, the smell of a river ahead, the tracks of a herd in the dust. Small observations, small innovations, and all of it accumulates over time. Every group that ventured out carried knowledge from previous generations, but they also added their own discoveries. Culture, once again, became evolution's quiet tool. And then there were the challenges of climate. Humans moving out of Africa faced colder lands, harsher winters, and environments they weren't physically adapted to. Yet, clever humans used fire, clothing, and shelter to survive. Bodies didn't need to evolve quickly because minds were inventing solutions faster than genes could change them. A warm fur cloak and a fire at night became more effective than bigger bodies or thicker skin. Evolution, in its quiet way, was taking notes. Some groups ventured far enough to meet other humans. Neanderthals in Europe, Denisovans in Asia. These encounters weren't always peaceful. Sometimes there was competition. Sometimes conflict. But sometimes there was interbreeding. That's right, your great-great-great. Okay, maybe many greats back, your ancestors might have had a little help from these cousins. Certain genes for immunity, cold resistance, and other survival traits entered our lineage thanks to these encounters. Evolution hadn't stopped, it had simply changed its method again, quietly swapping helpful genes while bodies looked mostly the same. Along the way, humans developed more sophisticated tools. Stone blades became sharper, spears became lighter and more aerodynamic, and eventually, boats carried small groups across rivers and seas. It was a slow, careful process, full of trial and error. You can almost picture someone on a raft thinking, "Well, I hope this doesn't leak," and realizing a few hours later that it kind of does. But each small mistake became a lesson for the next generation. Culture was evolving faster than bodies ever could. And there was humor, of course. Someone inevitably tripped over a root, dropped a fish, or got startled by a curious animal. Laughter, shared stories, and playful teasing kept morale high. Humans have always known that survival isn't just about muscles or brains, it's also about social bonds. Cooperation, empathy, and humor were quietly shaping evolution just as much as clever ideas and tools. As these groups spread across continents, their isolation caused small differences to appear. Skin tone adapted to sunlight. Body shapes adjusted subtly to climate. Some adaptations were physical, but many were still cultural. Clothing, fire management, diet, and social strategies. Evolution hadn't stopped, it had become a mix of culture and tiny, targeted changes. Eventually, humans reached lands that were extreme: icy tundras, dense forests, arid deserts. They weren't naturally adapted to these places, but culture had prepared them. Fire for warmth, shelters against wind, tools for hunting, and cooperation for survival. Humans had created a toolkit that could carry them anywhere. Physical evolution had slowed, but cultural evolution thrived, allowing humans to conquer environments that would have been impossible before. And as they traveled, humans told stories. Stories about the journey, about animals, about the stars above. These weren't just entertainment, they were instructions, lessons, and ways to remember important survival information. A child learning about a lion from a story was safer than a child learning the hard way. Culture was shaping the next generation more effectively than DNA alone could. Imagine standing in the snow, under a sky so dark and so full of stars that it seems to stretch forever. A small fire flickers nearby. Someone tells a story about a great hunt, someone else adjusts a spear, a few children giggle quietly. This is evolution happening in a new way, slow, quiet, and incredibly effective. Humans were no longer just adapting physically. They were adapting socially, mentally, and culturally, learning to survive in every corner of the world without needing major physical changes. And here's the beautiful part: every step, every idea, every story carried forward human knowledge. Each generation added something new, refining survival strategies, deepening social bonds, and developing creativity. Physical traits stayed mostly the same, but culture was exploding. Minds were the new frontier of evolution. So tonight, as you imagine the long journey out of Africa, think of those small bands walking beneath endless skies, listening to wind and water, noticing patterns, sharing knowledge, and laughing softly around their fires. Their journey wasn't just about reaching new lands. It was about teaching us something important, that evolution can happen quietly, in ways you can't see, and sometimes the greatest survival tools are ideas, not muscles. Even now, as we live in cities and scroll on phones, we carry that journey with us. Culture, knowledge, and innovation continue to guide human survival, and evolution keeps moving, quietly, inside our minds and communities. Because sometimes, the longest journeys aren't just across land. They're across generations, through stories, tools, and imagination. And that, in the end, is how humans truly evolved. If you could peek inside your DNA, you'd find whispers of the past. Tiny traces of people who lived tens of thousands of years ago, wandering the earth, surviving against impossible odds. Scientists call them ghosts in our genes, and they tell a story of survival, encounters, and even a little romance, evolution style. After humans left Africa, they didn't move alone. Other human species were still around: Neanderthals in Europe, Denisovans in Asia. Some of these cousins were bigger, stronger, and physically different, but clever in their own ways. And when humans met them, sometimes they fought. Sometimes they ignored each other. And sometimes, well, they mixed. Yes, your DNA carries traces of these encounters. About 1 to 2% of the DNA of people of European or Asian descent comes from Neanderthals. And some populations in Asia and Oceania carry Denisovan genes. These aren't just random souvenirs. Some of these ghost genes helped humans survive new environments. Genes for immunity, for skin adaptation, even for metabolism. These were passed down and still exist inside you today. Think of it like inheriting a survival toolkit from distant cousins, along with a few quirks, like maybe that sneeze reflex you can't explain. These ghosts remind us that evolution wasn't a straight line. It wasn't humans versus everyone else, or humans alone shaping the future. Evolution was messy, collaborative, and sometimes a little scandalous. But it worked. Humans incorporated useful traits without needing massive changes to bodies. While genes from interbreeding flowed quietly into populations, our overall physical form remained largely the same. Bodies stayed good enough. Minds and behaviors kept evolving. And yet, these genetic whispers also carry evidence of the bottleneck. Remember the Toba eruption? That near-extinction event left marks in our DNA. Certain genetic traits became more common, some rare traits disappeared. Populations were so small that chance played a huge role. It's almost like evolution shuffled a deck of cards, kept a few hands, and dealt them across the world. Some genes survived because they were useful. Others survived because of luck. And a few, well, they just got lucky. It's amazing to realize that nearly all humans alive today descend from those small, resilient groups. Every person carries a bit of that ancient fire, that stubborn survival instinct. And those ghosts in our genes are reminders of how close we came to not existing at all. In some ways, every breath you take is thanks to a tiny handful of ancestors who survived impossible odds. But evolution doesn't stop with survival. It's also about adaptation. These ghost genes sometimes gave humans advantages in new climates. For example, Neanderthal genes helped early humans in Europe survive cold winters. Denisovan genes helped in Asia. Evolution had found shortcuts. Instead of waiting thousands of years for a population to adapt physically, humans borrowed traits from neighbors. Clever, right? Of course, not all genetic ghosts were helpful. Some carried quirks that could be a little inconvenient, diseases or sensitivities that persisted. Evolution is rarely perfect. It's practical, opportunistic, and sometimes a little messy. But even these imperfections tell a story. They remind us that our history is complex, intertwined, and full of surprises. And here's the fun part. These genetic ghosts didn't just shape survival. They shaped behavior, instincts, and perhaps even social tendencies. Some studies suggest that interbreeding may have influenced cognition, mood, and stress responses. In a sense, your mind carries echoes of ancient encounters, quiet nudges from relatives who lived tens of thousands of years ago. You might not see it, but it's there, a subtle, guiding presence from the deep past. When you think about it, humans are a patchwork of survival strategies. Bodies, brains, and culture all play a part. And genes. They tell a story that doesn't end in the past. They're living reminders of resilience, adaptation, and sometimes the odd bit of luck that keeps a species alive. These genetic ghosts also show why physical evolution slowed after the bottleneck. Humans didn't need huge changes in body shape or size because their genes were already carrying useful traits. Instead, evolution started to focus on the brain, behavior, and culture. Survival became less about fighting with teeth and more about cooperation, planning, and creativity. And the ghosts of the past quietly supported that shift. Imagine a group of early humans walking through a snowy European forest. Some of their genes came from Neanderthals, helping them tolerate the cold. Their brains were sharp, their social skills refined, their tools clever. They survived, adapted, and passed those genes on. Every person today carries a little piece of that story. And sometimes, that's the most magical part. Evolution isn't just visible. It's hidden, quiet, and persistent, working in ways we can't see, whispering from the past into the present. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, picture these ghostly ancestors walking beside you. Not visible, not tangible, but still there. Their survival, their mistakes, their clever ideas, all carried forward in your DNA. Their whispers guide you in ways you can't always notice, shaping who we are and who we might become. And remember, evolution doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it borrows. Sometimes it pauses. But it never truly stops. The ghosts in our genes are proof of that. Quiet, subtle, endlessly patient. And in the end, they remind us that we are part of a story much bigger than ourselves, stretching across continents, species, and generations. Because when you look at your own hands, your own thoughts, and your own laughter, you're seeing the echoes of those ghosts. You are the living legacy of a journey filled with resilience, curiosity, and quiet genius. And that, perhaps more than anything, is why humans, even if our bodies paused in evolution, continue to thrive. After surviving the bottleneck, spreading across continents, and quietly borrowing helpful genes from distant cousins, humans entered a period that's both fascinating and strange, a pause in evolution. For tens of thousands of years, our bodies hardly changed. Bones, muscles, and faces stayed remarkably similar, even as the world around us shifted dramatically. It's as if evolution pressed the snooze button and took a very long nap. Imagine walking through the savannah, the forest, or along a river, just as your ancestors did. You would recognize them immediately. Sure, they might have been a little more rugged, their hair a little thicker, their noses slightly different, but overall, modern humans were already here. Bodies that had been honed over millions of years were now good enough. Evolution didn't need to tweak arms, legs, or faces much anymore. Survival didn't demand it. Why did it happen? The answer is surprisingly simple. Humans had become clever. Our brains, culture, and tools replaced the need for big physical changes. Instead of evolving bigger muscles to hunt or faster legs to outrun predators, humans made spears, traps, and strategies. Instead of adapting physically to harsh climates, we invented fire, clothing, and shelters. The environment still challenged us, but we had discovered a faster, more flexible way to adapt: our minds. This pause wasn't just biological, it was practical. Every change in the body takes generations to appear, and there's always risk involved. If you suddenly evolved bigger lungs or longer legs, it might help in some situations but hinder in others. By stabilizing, humans minimized unnecessary risks. Evolution focused instead on subtler changes, ones that didn't show in bones, like immunity, metabolism, and cognitive skills. It's as if nature said, "All right, the body's fine. Let's work on the brain and behavior instead." During this long pause, culture became the dominant force of change. Language, art, rituals, and cooperation flourished. Humans refined tools, discovered new foods, and began experimenting with agriculture. Social bonds became critical. Stories passed down knowledge, taught survival, and strengthened groups. This invisible evolution, shaping minds, behavior, and societies, replaced what might have been dramatic physical changes. And yet, even in this calm, humans still faced challenges. Climate fluctuations, predators, disease, none of it disappeared. But cleverness and culture allowed humans to thrive without massive bodily adaptations. A spear could replace speed. Fire could replace thick skin. A network of friends could replace brute strength. Evolution had effectively outsourced survival to intelligence and social skills. Interestingly, the pause helped preserve genetic stability. Because bodies weren't changing much, genes didn't shuffle as dramatically. This meant humans could accumulate and refine cultural knowledge without worrying that physical limitations would undermine it. You could teach someone how to make a spear, pass down techniques, or invent a better tool, all without needing evolution to catch up physically. It's also during this pause that humans' social complexity grew. Living in groups required cooperation, empathy, and communication. These traits became incredibly important for survival. Evolution quietly favored individuals who could negotiate, share, and empathize, behaviors that were much faster to evolve through culture than through DNA alone. Humor, storytelling, and even small rituals all strengthened bonds and increased the chances of surviving hard times. And of course, humans still had their clumsy, funny moments. Someone probably tripped over a log, got startled by a bird, or misjudged a river crossing. Laughter broke the tension, bonding the group. These small social behaviors may seem trivial, but they were part of a new kind of evolution, one where cooperation, play, and communication mattered more than raw physical power. During this period, humans also spread into new environments that challenged survival in subtle ways. Deserts, mountains, and colder regions required new strategies. Instead of evolving physically to cope with these climates, humans innovated. Clothing, fire management, housing, and social strategies became extensions of the human body. The pause allowed minds to expand while bodies remained stable. The pause lasted tens of thousands of years, long enough for culture to become deeply entrenched, for tools to improve gradually, and for humans to master a variety of environments without needing dramatic bodily adaptations. Evolution was still at work, but quietly, in genes that improved immunity, cognition, and metabolism. Physical changes slowed, but mental and cultural evolution surged forward. And here's a comforting thought. This pause shows that evolution isn't always about dramatic changes. Sometimes it's about patience, stability, and giving room for other forces, like culture, to shape a species. Humans didn't need to evolve bigger muscles or sharper teeth because our minds, cooperation, and ingenuity had taken over. Evolution had found a new path, quiet, subtle, and brilliantly effective. So tonight, as you drift to sleep, imagine a human from tens of thousands of years ago. Their body is familiar to you. Their hands could make tools you'd recognize. Their face could smile in ways you understand. But their mind, their mind is exploring, imagining, storytelling, teaching, and learning. Bodies paused, but minds were awake. Culture took the lead, shaping survival in ways no skeleton ever could. And that's the lesson of the pause. Evolution doesn't always race. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it steps aside. Sometimes it whispers. And sometimes, in the quiet of tens of thousands of years, humans discovered that cleverness, curiosity, and cooperation could carry them farther than bigger muscles or sharper teeth ever could. The pause wasn't a stop. It was a shift. A quiet, patient turning of the page in the story of humanity. And in that shift, humans found a new kind of power. The power of mind, culture, and imagination. After tens of thousands of years of physical stability, humans had a secret weapon: their hands. Clever hands, paired with clever minds, became the ultimate agents of survival. Bodies may have paused, but tools took over. And through tools, humans shaped their world, and themselves, in ways evolution had never needed to. Imagine a human holding a sharp stone. It might not seem like much, but it's revolutionary. That single tool could cut meat, carve wood, or defend against predators. One tool, and suddenly survival became a lot more manageable. Instead of evolving sharper teeth or stronger arms, humans could invent a solution. This is the brilliance of tools. They act as extensions of the body, allowing humans to adapt faster than evolution ever could. Fire is another perfect example. Before fire, cold nights and dangerous predators made survival brutal. But fire changed everything. It provided warmth, light, safety, and a gathering point for social bonds. Cooking food made nutrients easier to digest. Communities could thrive even in harsher climates. The body didn't need to evolve thicker skin or more efficient digestion. Humans had invented a shortcut, using tools and knowledge to overcome biological limits. Evolution, in a way, was happily taking notes. Tools didn't just replace physical change, they also accelerated cultural evolution. Once humans made a tool, they could teach others how to use it. Knowledge passed down from generation to generation, improved over time. A simple stone spearhead became sharper, lighter, and more effective. Wooden handles became sturdier. Traps became cleverer. Innovation became cumulative. Evolution didn't have to wait for mutations. Humans did it themselves. And let's be honest, humans have always been a little lazy when it comes to survival. Why evolve stronger jaws when a cutting tool can do the job? Why evolve sharper claws when a spear can do the hunting? Tools allowed humans to solve problems quickly and efficiently. Brains and hands together became the ultimate adaptive strategy. Evolution had slowed, but innovation had sped up. Tools also reshaped social dynamics. Imagine a group of humans learning to make fire, or teaching each other to sharpen blades. Knowledge sharing strengthened bonds, encouraged cooperation, and increased survival odds. Being smart and collaborative became more important than being strong or fast. This subtle shift, from brute force to brainpower, is part of why humans stopped changing physically. Our survival didn't rely on new body shapes, it relied on ingenuity, skill, and teamwork. Think about it, every innovation is like evolution sneaking through a side door. A bone needle allows humans to make clothing, opening up cold climates. A fishing spear allows humans to exploit new food sources. A simple digging stick allows humans to farm and settle in one place. Tools amplify intelligence, giving humans a way to adapt faster than natural selection can work. Physical evolution may have paused, but human creativity turned into a superpower, and humor wasn't left behind. Imagine someone accidentally stabbing their own foot while testing a new spear design. Laughter breaks the tension. Social bonds strengthen. Lessons are learned. Even mistakes became part of the evolutionary toolkit. Evolution through trial, error, and wit. Culture and tools were now evolving faster than bodies ever could. The beauty of tools is that they create feedback loops. A better tool allows more success in hunting, which allows more people to survive, which allows more minds to invent even better tools. It's evolution turbocharged, invisible, quiet, but extremely effective. And because tools reduced the pressure on the body, humans could maintain their physical form for tens of thousands of years without dramatic change. And yet, tools didn't stop at survival. They allowed humans to experiment, to play, to imagine. Carved objects, early musical instruments, and decorative items appeared alongside practical tools. Innovation wasn't just about food or safety anymore. It became a way to express identity, creativity, and culture. Evolution had moved indoors, into the mind, and into the hands, leaving bodies almost untouched. It's fascinating to realize that while other species continued to evolve physically, humans had discovered a shortcut. Instead of waiting tens of thousands of years for bodies to adapt, we adapted ourselves through tools, culture, and ingenuity. Our environment didn't shape us as much as our minds and hands shaped the environment. Evolution paused for our skeletons, but it thrived in our creativity. And here's the gentle humor of it all. Even after mastering tools, humans still stumbled, misjudged, or miscalculated. A spear might break. Fire might go out. A trap might fail. But each mistake was a lesson, a small tweak, a tiny step forward. This trial and error process became the engine of human progress. And it didn't require new arms, legs, or teeth, just clever minds and steady hands. So tonight, imagine yourself sitting by an ancient fire. Around you are hands shaping stone, carving wood, and spinning fibers. Minds are thinking ahead, inventing, experimenting. Stories are being told, mistakes are laughed at, and tools are slowly becoming more than survival instruments. They are extensions of human creativity and intelligence. Evolution has stepped back from bones, but it's alive in minds, hands, and culture. Because tools didn't just replace change, they transformed it. They turned humans into creators, innovators, and storytellers. And even today, when you pick up a pen, type on a keyboard, or swipe a screen, you're still part of that lineage. Every tool, every idea, every story is a continuation of evolution, quiet, subtle, and brilliant. And as you drift to sleep tonight, remember this: our bodies may have paused, but our hands and minds never did. Tools became our allies, our extensions, and our way of shaping the world without needing to reshape ourselves. Evolution found a new path, and it's one that continues quietly inside every invention, every creative act, and every story told around a fire. Then, now, and into the future. By now, humans had discovered something remarkable. The body could pause, but the mind could blaze. While our muscles and skeletons had stopped evolving dramatically, the brain became the engine of survival. Intelligence, creativity, and cooperation replaced brute strength as the ultimate tools. The fire within wasn't just literal, it was metaphorical too. Imagine sitting around a flickering campfire tens of thousands of years ago. The sun has dipped below the horizon, shadows dance across the faces of your group. Muscles are tired from the day's hunt, hands are sore from crafting tools, but minds are alive, weaving stories, solving problems, and dreaming of tomorrow. That fire, the physical one, warms bodies. But the fire within warms ingenuity, curiosity, and imagination. It's amazing to think about. Early humans didn't need stronger arms to hunt large game. They didn't need sharper teeth to process meat. Instead, they used strategy, cooperation, and tools. One human could direct a group to drive animals toward traps. Another could invent a spear with a detachable point, improving efficiency without changing their body. The mind had become the real powerhouse of evolution. And brains weren't just for hunting. They allowed humans to communicate, plan, and teach. A parent could warn a child about dangerous plants. A friend could share a technique for fishing. Knowledge didn't rely on trial and error alone. It could leap generations through storytelling and teaching. Culture had become the shortcut evolution had been looking for. Fast, flexible, and incredibly effective. Humans were also learning to anticipate the environment. By observing animal patterns, weather cycles, and seasonal changes, they could predict outcomes and make decisions in advance. They weren't just reacting, they were planning. Evolution had shifted focus from the body's response to the mind's foresight. Being clever became more important than being strong, fast, or tall. Of course, humans weren't suddenly perfect. There were mistakes, clumsy attempts, and humorous mishaps. Someone misjudged the trajectory of a spear, another miscalculated a river crossing. Laughter would ripple through the group, easing tension and reinforcing social bonds. Humor, storytelling, and empathy became part of the toolkit for survival. Subtle evolutionary forces shaping behavior rather than bones. And that's the beauty of this shift. While physical evolution slowed, mental and social evolution accelerated. Cooperation, communication, and creativity allowed humans to colonize new environments, face harsh climates, and survive predators. The body didn't need to change as long as the mind could adapt. Evolution had found a more efficient route, brains over brawn. Tools, of course, amplified this advantage. Spears, knives, digging sticks, and fire weren't just survival aids, they were extensions of intelligence. They allowed humans to interact with the environment in ways no other species could. Instead of evolving claws or sharper teeth, humans learned to innovate. Brains and hands together created a world where survival depended on thought and skill rather than sheer physicality. And here's the subtle humor of it. Sometimes brains and hands made mistakes, too. Fires got too big, tools broke, plans failed. But every mistake was a lesson, building collective knowledge. Humans learned faster than evolution could, passing insights across generations. Brains became the vehicle for adaptation, faster and more flexible than DNA could ever hope to be. This shift also affected social life. Living in groups required empathy, negotiation, and teaching. Humans who could cooperate had better survival odds. Sharing food, warning of danger, or helping the injured wasn't just kindness, it was evolutionary advantage. Minds guided bodies, culture reinforced knowledge, and cooperation became a trait as valuable as speed or strength once was. The fire within also fueled curiosity. Humans explored new lands, tested new foods, experimented with tools, and developed rituals and art. Each discovery, each small invention, was a step forward in survival and culture. While bodies remained relatively stable, minds were dynamic, constantly evolving strategies for life. This internal fire allowed humans to thrive in environments far beyond Africa, from icy tundras to dense forests and arid deserts. Even storytelling played a practical role. Narratives preserved knowledge, taught lessons, and passed along strategies. They were evolution in action, shaping behavior, enhancing cooperation, and refining social intelligence. A good story around the fire wasn't just entertainment, it was survival training. Every tale, every joke, every gesture strengthened bonds and improved collective memory. And this mental evolution wasn't limited to survival. It laid the foundation for art, music, and culture. Humans began marking caves, carving figurines, and experimenting with symbolic thought. These weren't necessary for immediate survival, but they shaped the human mind, encouraged imagination, and reinforced group cohesion. Evolution had discovered a new playground, the brain itself. So, as you lie in bed tonight, imagine that ancient fire. Picture humans gathered, tired but alert, hands busy with tools, minds alive with ideas and stories. They're not running faster or fighting stronger beasts. They're thinking, teaching, and imagining. Their survival depends less on muscles and more on minds, the ultimate tool. And remember, that fire within never stopped. Even today, it drives creativity, problem-solving, storytelling, and innovation. Physical evolution paused, but mental evolution blazed forward. Brains became the architects of survival, shaping not just bodies, but societies, tools, and culture. Tonight, as you drift off, let the fire within guide your imagination. Think of yourself as part of that long lineage, clever, resourceful, and endlessly creative. The human journey didn't end with physical evolution. It only began, inside minds, around fires, and in stories whispered across generations. Because in the end, survival wasn't about muscles. It was about the fire within. By now, it was clear, humans had discovered a remarkable trick. While other species continued evolving slowly through bodies and bones, humans were shaping the world with something much faster. Their minds, brains, creativity, and culture were now the engines of survival. Physical evolution had slowed, but cultural evolution, the evolution of ideas, behaviors, and knowledge, was accelerating. Imagine standing on the edge of a river, tens of thousands of years ago. You could feel the water's cool rush, smell the mud and reeds, and see animals moving along the banks. Your body is fine, no major changes needed, but your mind is busy. You're thinking, where will the herd go next? How can we trap fish more efficiently? Can we use branches to make a bridge or a shelter? Every decision, every idea, every tiny improvement shapes survival faster than evolution ever could. Humans began reshaping landscapes in subtle ways. Fires managed grasslands. Shelters protected from weather. Tools allowed hunting, gathering, and fishing to be more efficient. Knowledge passed from one generation to the next. Minds, not bodies, were the architects of survival. By using intelligence and creativity, humans could thrive in environments that would have been impossible for earlier generations. And it wasn't just about survival. Humans were experimenting. They made ornaments, carved symbols, painted on rocks, and crafted jewelry. These innovations weren't strictly necessary, but they shaped social bonds, identity, and communication. Humans were learning that the world could be molded by thought and intention. Bodies remained largely the same, but the environment and culture changed dramatically. Cooperation became a critical advantage. Unlike solitary predators, humans relied on networks of communication and shared knowledge. Coordinated hunting, collective childcare, and communal problem-solving allowed survival in ways sheer strength could never. Being clever and social became more important than being faster, bigger, or stronger. Evolution had quietly shifted focus from muscle and bone to brains and relationships. And humor played its subtle role, too. Imagine a small band of humans crossing a river. Someone slips on a rock, splashing everyone. Laughter breaks the tension, reinforcing social bonds. Cooperation and empathy became essential survival traits, silently favored by evolution. Social intelligence had become as important as physical ability, if not more. Humans also began leaving marks that lasted beyond lifetimes. Carvings, beads, cave paintings, small symbols that communicated ideas and preserved knowledge. These weren't tools for survival in the traditional sense, but they strengthened culture, memory, and social cohesion. Minds, not bodies, were shaping a legacy that would outlast individuals. It's fascinating to consider. While evolution had paused for physical traits, it had not stopped. Minds and culture became evolution's new playground. Knowledge could leap generations instantly, rather than waiting for genes to mutate. Tools, stories, strategies, and rituals allowed humans to thrive in deserts, forests, mountains, and tundras without dramatic bodily changes. The world itself was being reshaped by intelligence. And of course, humans weren't perfect. Tools could break. Fire could go out. Plans could fail. But mistakes became lessons, stories, and innovations. Evolution didn't need to act on bones because it was acting on behavior, learning, and social systems. Cleverness and adaptability were now the survival traits that mattered most. By this point, humans were masters of indirect adaptation. Instead of waiting for the environment to shape bodies, humans shaped the environment to fit their needs. Fires managed landscapes. Shelters created safe spaces. Tools extended physical abilities. And stories ensured that knowledge survived. Humans had, in a sense, rewritten the rules of evolution. Bodies were stable, but minds and culture were dynamic. And this shift didn't just prepare humans for survival. It laid the groundwork for everything we consider civilization. Settlements, farming, trade, and technology all emerged from this new form of evolution. Humans no longer relied solely on DNA to adapt. Knowledge, creativity, and social intelligence became the main forces guiding the species forward. Imagine yourself sitting by a fire tonight, tens of thousands of years ago. Your hands are shaping tools, your mind is thinking ahead, and your group is sharing knowledge. The world around you responds, subtly changing to fit human needs. Bodies remain mostly the same, but culture expands. Minds, stories, and tools shape survival more than evolution ever did through bones. And here's the gentle magic of it all. Humans had discovered that evolution doesn't always act directly on bodies. Sometimes it acts through thought, innovation, and collaboration. Humans became not just survivors but creators. Brains became the real instruments of change, shaping the world, culture, and even the path of evolution itself. So tonight, as you drift to sleep, imagine this invisible force at work. Evolution has stepped back from muscles, bones, and teeth. It works quietly through ideas, culture, and intelligence. Minds shape the world, not bodies. And in that shaping, humans continue the slow, patient, brilliant work of survival. A work that began tens of thousands of years ago and continues inside you today. Because the world we live in is a reflection of the minds that shaped it. Bodies paused, but thought, culture, and creativity never did. And that, more than anything, is the true power of humanity. The ability to evolve not just physically, but mentally, socially, and creatively. By now, humans had reached a delicate balance. Bodies had mostly stopped changing, but minds and culture were thriving. Evolution hadn't vanished, it had simply shifted gears. Our survival was no longer about brute strength or sharper teeth. It was about a slow, intricate dance between genes and culture. Think of it like a waltz. Genes provide the rhythm, subtle and steady. Culture provides the steps, improvising, adapting, and sometimes leaping ahead of the music. For tens of thousands of years, humans have been moving together in this dance, bodies mostly the same, minds growing sharper, stories richer, and tools more clever. This dance begins with the body. Our genes still matter. Genes determine how the body handles food, resists disease, or reacts to stress. But they've become a subtle background force, less about dramatic changes and more about fine-tuning. The body is like a well-tuned instrument. It doesn't need constant redesign because it already plays the melody well enough. Culture, on the other hand, is like a dancer learning new moves. Humans share knowledge, innovate, and experiment. Each generation refines tools, strategies, and social behaviors. A lesson learned by one person can ripple through the group, creating changes far faster than genes could ever manage. This is why humans survived in deserts, forests, mountains, and icy tundras without major physical adaptations. Culture amplified survival beyond what biology alone could achieve. And the dance isn't always smooth. Sometimes genes and culture pull in slightly different directions. For example, genetic evolution may favor certain metabolic traits, while cultural changes, like cooking or farming, shift diets in new ways. Humans navigate this carefully, subtly adjusting behavior and habits to maintain balance. Humor and creativity often smooth over the bumps, making social bonds stronger and adaptation easier. One fascinating part of this dance is how culture can shield the body from evolutionary pressures. Humans don't need thicker skin to survive in cold climates if they wear clothing. We don't need sharper teeth if we cook food. Fires, shelters, clothing, and tools reduce the selective pressure on bodies, giving humans freedom to focus on creativity, learning, and social cohesion. Evolution quietly waits in the background while culture leads the choreography. And yet, genes are still listening, quietly nudging the dance. Certain traits, like immunity, endurance, and brain development, continue to evolve in response to new challenges. But these changes are subtle, invisible in the skeletons of our ancestors. Culture moves faster, improvises, and spreads knowledge instantly, while genes take their time, ticking slowly in the background. Together, they create a balance between stability and innovation. Consider how storytelling fits into this dance. Stories aren't just entertainment. They teach lessons, warn about dangers, and preserve strategies for survival. A story about a clever trap or a poisonous plant can save lives. This is cultural evolution in action, moving faster than genes, shaping behavior, and reducing the need for physical adaptation. Meanwhile, genes continue to support cognition, memory, and social skills, silently aiding the dance. And here's a fun thought. Humor, laughter, and play are part of the choreography too. Humans who cooperate, joke, and empathize are more likely to survive. Social intelligence becomes a survival advantage. Evolution favors it. Culture reinforces it. The dance becomes richer, more complex, and more beautiful with each generation. The slow dance also explains why humans could spread across the globe without major bodily changes. Intelligence, creativity, and social cooperation allowed adaptation to almost any environment. Bodies stayed good enough, while minds improvised solutions for every challenge. Fires, tools, clothing, strategies, and stories carried humans farther than evolution through genes alone could have. And this dance continues today. Technology, education, language, and culture move faster than our bodies can evolve. Genes adapt slowly, almost imperceptibly, while human creativity surges ahead. We are still dancing, still balancing the subtle rhythms of biology with the improvisations of culture. and the steps we take today are built on tens of thousands of years of movement, trial, error, and ingenuity. So tonight, imagine the dance. Picture ancestors around a fire, passing stories, teaching skills, crafting tools, and laughing together. Bodies stable, but minds alive. Culture leads, genes follow, each step carefully orchestrated, each move building on the last. The dance continues across generations, shaping survival, society, and the human spirit itself. It's a quiet, patient kind of evolution, almost invisible, but it is no less powerful. It teaches us that survival isn't only about changing bodies. Sometimes it's about thinking, cooperating, creating, and sharing knowledge. Sometimes evolution works through culture, ingenuity, and imagination rather than bones and muscles. And as you drift off to sleep tonight, picture yourself in that dance. Your thoughts, ideas, and creativity are part of the choreography. You carry the rhythm of genes and the steps of culture, moving together through history. Bodies may pause, but minds and culture never stop. The dance continues, quietly, brilliantly, and endlessly. Because in the end, humans didn't just survive through muscles or teeth. We survived, and thrived, through minds, culture, and the slow, patient waltz of genes and ideas. After tens of thousands of years of cultural explosion, something remarkable happened. Evolution slowed down. Our bodies stopped changing in any dramatic way. Hands, arms, legs, faces, teeth. Most of it stayed remarkably similar. Evolution, which had once been the relentless sculptor of species, decided to take a back seat. And humans? Well, we kept walking, thinking, laughing, and inventing. Why did evolution slow? The answer is surprisingly simple. Humans had found a better way to survive. Instead of relying solely on physical adaptation, we leaned on brains, culture, and cooperation. Fires, tools, clothing, and social bonds reduced the pressure on our bodies to evolve. If your body could survive the challenges of the world with the help of clever ideas and community, why change it at all? Evolution paused because it didn't need to rush. Imagine our ancestors trekking across forests, deserts, and icy plains. Their bodies were ready for survival, good enough to endure the elements. But their minds were wide awake. They planned, innovated, and adapted strategies faster than evolution could tweak bones. One clever solution, a spear, a shelter, or a hunting strategy, could solve what might have taken thousands of years for the body to adapt to. Minds had become the real engine of survival. During this period, humans refined culture. Knowledge passed from one generation to the next, becoming increasingly sophisticated. Stories taught lessons. Social cooperation improved hunting success. Small innovations accumulated, compounding over time. Brains and culture allowed humans to thrive in places that would have been impossible without these tools. The body stayed mostly the same, but human life became richer, safer, and more adaptable. Even mistakes became part of this evolutionary strategy. Someone misjudged a spear throw, a trap failed, or a fire got out of control. These errors didn't just teach lessons, they created stories, jokes, and social bonds. Humor became a survival skill. Laughter reinforced cooperation. Social intelligence started to matter more than physical power. Evolution had stepped back from muscles and bones and was quietly working through behavior, creativity, and society. This back-seat approach didn't mean evolution stopped completely. Subtle genetic changes continued. Immunity improved, cognitive traits refined, and minor physiological adjustments appeared in response to new challenges. But these changes were slow and invisible compared to the rapid pace of cultural evolution. Minds were improvising faster than genes could respond. Humans were surviving and thriving without waiting for evolution to catch up. And the timing was perfect. While bodies rested, culture flourished. Tools became sharper, clothing warmer, shelters sturdier. Language grew richer. Social networks strengthened. Humans could manipulate their environment in ways that physical evolution alone could never have achieved. The species became more resilient, more adaptive, and more creative, all without major changes to the body. The pause also allowed humans to explore curiosity. Not everything had to be about immediate survival. Early humans painted caves, carved figurines, and created jewelry. These behaviors might seem decorative, even frivolous, but they strengthened social cohesion, memory, and creativity. Minds became the playground for evolution, while bodies stayed relatively fixed. And here's the subtle humor in it all. Humans still stumbled, misjudged, and got into trouble. Fires burned down, tools broke, and plans failed. But every failure became a story, a lesson, a social glue. Survival didn't depend on perfection. It depended on creativity, collaboration, and adaptability. Evolution had taken a back seat, but it was still whispering through culture, brains, and behaviors. This period also shows why humans could spread across the globe without dramatic bodily changes. From the tropics to icy tundras, humans adapted through innovation rather than anatomy. Clothing replaced thick fur. Fire replaced the need for heat-adapted bodies. Tools replaced stronger teeth or claws. Minds had become the primary survival tool, and evolution was content to let culture lead the way. Even today, we carry the legacy of this back-seat approach. Our bodies remain largely similar to those of humans from tens of thousands of years ago. But our minds, creativity, and social structures have propelled us into cities, technology, and complex civilizations. Evolution may have slowed physically, but it accelerated culturally, allowing humans to shape the world instead of being shaped by it. So tonight, imagine your ancestors sitting by a fire, stable and strong, but minds alert and alive. Bodies rested, but ideas flowed. Tools, strategies, and stories carried survival. Culture became evolution's new stage, and humans, clever, curious, and cooperative, stepped into the spotlight. And that's the wonder of evolution taking a back seat. It shows that survival isn't always about bigger muscles or sharper teeth. Sometimes it's about brains, cooperation, curiosity, and imagination. Humans had discovered a new kind of power, the ability to thrive without changing physically, using thought and culture as their main instruments. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep, picture that quiet back seat. Evolution isn't gone. It's patient, subtle, and clever. And humans, we're driving forward, hands on the wheel of culture, minds full of ideas, quietly thriving while evolution enjoys the ride. Because in the end, bodies paused, but minds raced ahead. And that, more than anything, is why humans survived, thrived, and shaped the world we know today. After thousands of years of survival and slow bodily change, humans reached a turning point. Physical evolution had paused, but something remarkable had taken over: culture. Stories, tools, rituals, and social systems became the new engines of adaptation. In a sense, humans had discovered a shortcut, a way to evolve faster and smarter than DNA alone could manage. Imagine sitting around a fire, tens of thousands of years ago, Your hands are busy carving a tool. Your group is sharing a story. Someone shows a new way to fish or trap animals. Every piece of knowledge spreads, improving survival. And the incredible part: no genes needed to change for that innovation to take effect. Culture itself became evolution, rapid, flexible, and incredibly effective. Culture allowed humans to adapt to places no other species could. Deserts, icy tundras, dense forests, all became habitable because knowledge, cooperation, and creativity could overcome environmental challenges. Clothing replaced fur. Fire replaced physical cold resistance. Tools replaced teeth and claws. Minds, rather than bodies, became the primary survival instrument. Evolution had effectively handed the baton to culture. And culture isn't just about survival. It shapes social life, cooperation, and empathy. Humans learned to negotiate, share resources, and teach skills. Social intelligence became a powerful survival trait. Humor, storytelling, and rituals strengthened bonds. A child who learned a hunting trick from a story survived better than one who didn't. Culture was evolution in action, invisible, cumulative, and transformational. One of the most fascinating aspects of cultural evolution is speed. Genetic changes take generations, sometimes thousands of years. Cultural innovations can spread almost instantly. A new tool, a better hunting strategy, or a novel social approach could propagate throughout a group within a lifetime. Culture allowed humans to leapfrog biological evolution, adapting faster than the slow tick of DNA mutations. And culture is cumulative. Knowledge builds on knowledge. A sharpened spear leads to better traps, which leads to new ways to store food, which leads to more settled communities, which leads to innovations like pottery, weaving, and early art. Each step doesn't require a physical change, yet it profoundly reshapes how humans live and interact. Evolution, in this form, is clever, rapid, and invisible, and it thrives where bodies remain stable. Humans also began experimenting with abstract ideas. Art, music, symbolism, and rituals emerged alongside practical knowledge. These were more than just entertainment. They strengthened social cohesion, reinforced cultural identity, and encouraged learning and memory. Minds were evolving, not through mutation, but through creativity and collective experience. Culture had become the new laboratory for survival. And of course, mistakes were part of the process. Fires got too big. Tools broke. Strategies failed. But each failure became a lesson, a story, a joke. Humans learned collectively, reducing the need for dangerous trial and error in the body. Culture was safer, faster, and more flexible than waiting for evolution to catch up. Laughter and storytelling became subtle survival strategies, shaping behavior and strengthening bonds. The shift to cultural evolution also explains why humans spread across the globe so effectively. Bodies remained good enough, but culture provided solutions. Shelter, clothing, hunting strategies, and cooperation allowed humans to thrive in environments that would have been impossible for other species. Knowledge became the ultimate survival tool, outpacing physical adaptation by millennia. This also highlights why humans stopped evolving dramatically in physical terms. The body didn't need to change because culture could solve problems faster and more safely. Intelligence, creativity, and social learning became the main drivers of survival. Humans were still evolving, just in a way that left no visible mark on bones. Evolution had gone undercover, working quietly through minds and communities. Imagine your ancestors teaching a child to make a spear. That child will survive longer and perhaps teach the next generation something even smarter. One idea becomes 10. 10 ideas become 100. Culture spreads and accumulates far faster than mutations ever could. Humans became, in effect, self-directing evolution, using brains, hands, and stories to shape survival instead of waiting for nature to sculpt their bodies. And that's the magic of it. Humans discovered that evolution doesn't have to act solely through genes and bodies. Minds and culture can accelerate adaptation, spread knowledge, and even create new survival strategies that DNA alone could never provide. We became architects of our own evolution, quietly shaping the future through thought, creativity, and collaboration. So tonight, as you close your eyes, imagine humans around ancient fires, exchanging knowledge, telling stories, sharing tools, laughing, and teaching. Bodies are stable, but minds are alive, shaping the environment, society, and survival itself. Culture has become evolution's new path, faster, cleverer, and more transformative than any change in bone or muscle could achieve. And as you drift into sleep, remember this: evolution may have slowed in the body, but it is thriving in the mind. Every story told, every tool invented, every act of cooperation is part of a long, patient, brilliant process. Culture has become the new evolution, and humans, clever and curious, are its finest instruments. And so we arrive at the quiet, remarkable chapter in the story of humanity, the pause. Tens of thousands of years ago, humans stopped changing dramatically in body. Arms, legs, faces, and teeth remained stable. Evolution, which had once been relentless and visible in every bone, slowed down. But this pause was not stagnation. It was preparation, a subtle shaping of the human mind, culture, and society. Imagine walking through a forest long ago. Your body is good enough to survive. Your hands shape tools. Your mind notices patterns in animals, plants, and the stars above. Your group sits around a fire, sharing stories, solving problems, laughing at mistakes. The world is challenging, but you are equipped. Bodies have paused. Minds are awake. Culture is growing. Survival is no longer about muscles or teeth. It's about ideas, cooperation, and creativity. The pause allowed humans to develop in ways that physical evolution could not. By keeping the body stable, evolution gave culture and intelligence room to flourish. Knowledge could be shared, tools could improve, and social bonds could strengthen without the distraction of dramatic bodily changes. Humans learned faster than genes could mutate, passing lessons across generations through stories, teaching, and shared experience. And the pause was not a stop. It was a shift, a quiet turning of attention from bone to brain, from brute strength to creativity, from raw survival to innovation. Humans discovered that intelligence, cooperation, and culture could overcome almost any environmental challenge. The body had been optimized enough to survive, but the mind, became the true instrument of evolution. Think of the small, everyday innovations that emerged during this period. Better tools, clothing to withstand cold, shelters to weather storms, hunting strategies to capture larger game. Each of these reduced pressure on the body to change. Fire kept people warm instead of evolving thicker skin. Cooking softened food instead of evolving sharper teeth. Tools amplified strength and speed, making physical evolution less necessary. Evolution had stepped back from bones, quietly guiding minds and culture instead. The pause also allowed humans to explore abstract thought. Art, music, rituals, and symbols emerged. These behaviors weren't strictly about survival, yet they strengthened social cohesion, memory, and learning. Minds were growing more complex, creative, and capable, even as bodies remained largely the same. Humans were, in effect, evolving through culture, imagination, and cooperation. And let's not forget humor. Mistakes, slipping on rocks, misjudging a spear throw, or accidentally dropping a meal into a fire, became lessons and laughter. Social intelligence, empathy, and play became evolutionary tools, helping humans survive and thrive. The pause allowed these subtler forms of evolution to take center stage. During this time, humans spread across the globe. From deserts to icy tundras, from dense forests to high mountains, culture allowed humans to adapt where bodies alone could not. Knowledge, tools, and social networks replaced physical evolution as the key to survival. The pause enabled humans to think ahead, cooperate, and innovate, securing a future without needing drastic bodily changes. And here's the remarkable part: the pause shaped what it means to be human. It allowed for curiosity, creativity, and imagination to flourish. Humans could experiment, learn, and teach. Minds became the primary survival tool. Culture became evolution's new vehicle. And through all this, humans not only survived but thrived, laying the foundation for art, science, and civilization. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, picture your ancestors sitting around fires long ago. Their bodies are familiar, strong enough to endure. Their hands craft tools, their minds invent, and their stories travel across generations. Mistakes are laughed at, lessons are passed on, and knowledge grows. The pause gave humans the space to discover that survival isn't just about muscles, teeth, or bones. It's about brains, creativity, cooperation, and culture. The pause reminds us that evolution can work quietly. It doesn't always shout through dramatic changes in bone or muscle. Sometimes it whispers through stories, innovation, and social bonds. Humans learn to adapt without changing physically, using intelligence and creativity as their greatest tools. The pause wasn't a period of stagnation, it was the foundation for everything we are today. And as you imagine this quiet, patient shaping of humanity, think of yourself as part of that legacy. The intelligence, creativity, and curiosity within you are the continuation of tens of thousands of years of innovation, adaptation, and imagination. Bodies paused, minds thrived, culture evolved, and the world changed in ways that bones alone never could have achieved. Because in the end, humans didn't just survive through teeth, muscles, or speed. We survived through thought, cooperation, creativity, and culture. The pause didn't halt evolution, it redirected it. And that redirection, quiet and patient, shaped humanity into the species capable of shaping the world itself. So tonight, as you close your eyes, let the pause speak to you. Let it remind you that evolution doesn't always act through the visible, obvious, or immediate. Sometimes it works quietly, invisibly, and brilliantly, through minds, culture, and imagination. And it is in that quiet work that humans truly became what we are today. And that's the end of tonight's journey through time, for now. If you enjoyed drifting through history with me, don't forget to subscribe, so we can explore more mysteries of our past together, one bedtime story at a time. Hit the like button if you want more stories that make your mind wander and your imagination stretch across centuries. And tap the notification bell so you never miss a whisper from the past. Thank you for joining me tonight. Sleep well, dream deep, and remember, history is never really gone. It just waits for curious minds like yours.